I'm Patricia Ezechie, and this is Proactive Empowered Careers, a space for thinking about careers differently, not as something separate from who you are, but as an expression of you and the life you want to live. Hello everyone, and welcome back to today's episode. Now, across the last few episodes, we've been exploring something that, on the surface, can look quite small. Noticing. Noticing where you feel energized, noticing where you feel drained, noticing where you adapt, noticing where you feel more like yourself, and noticing where you feel a quiet pull towards something different. And if you've been listening along, you might have realized something. None of these things are dramatic. They're not huge life moments, they're just observations. Small recognitions. But when those recognitions start to accumulate, something happens. Something changes. You begin to see your life more clearly, and sometimes that clarity leads to a surprisingly simple realization. You are allowed to shape your life. Not perfectly or completely, but so much more than you might have realized. Because many of us grow up with an idea about life that looks something like this. You choose a path, you follow it, you adapt to it, you make the best of it, you're grateful for it, and you don't question it too much. And for a while that might work. It provides stability, direction, and momentum. But over time, we begin to discover that life doesn't actually unfold that neatly. Careers evolve, our interests change, our priorities shift, our energy changes, and even our life circumstances change. And suddenly, the path that once made sense doesn't anymore and feels less obvious. And this is where people often get stuck. Because the assumption underneath everything is, surely I should already know what I'm doing, or surely I should have figured this out by now. But life rarely works that way. Because you're not the same person you were 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. Your experiences have changed you. Responsibilities change you. Success changes you. Difficulty changes you. And so it makes sense that the way you live and work may need to evolve as well, because you've evolved. But many people never pause long enough to consider that possibility. They assume life is something you fit yourself into, a role, a profession, or a structure that already exists. And their job is simply to adapt. But the truth is, life is more interesting than that. Life is not only something you just enter, it's something you gradually shape through the decisions you make, through experiments, through the boundaries you set, through the conversations and relationships that you have, through what you say yes to and what you say no to. Now, this doesn't mean that you control everything. Of course you don't. Our circumstances matter. Money matters. Our health matters. The responsibilities that we have matter. The systems we live and work inside matter. All of these things influence what is possible. But that influence is not the same as total control, and is also not the same as having no influence at all. Most of us live somewhere in the middle of that, in that in-between, with more room to shape our experiences than we realize. And sometimes the first step in that process is simply recognizing that shaping is allowed. You are allowed to ask, what kind of life do I want my work to support? What kind of pace suits me? What environments help me thrive? What actually matters to me now? Not what mattered when I was 20 or when I first started in my profession, but now. Because when you understand yourself more clearly, you begin to see opportunities differently and your options differently. Opportunities that once seemed obvious may feel less compelling, and paths you never considered might start to look more interesting. Conversations and relationships that you once avoided might start to feel more necessary, and gradually, often very gradually, the shape of your life begins to shift. Not all at once, but piece by piece. And sometimes that shift comes through the experiments we talked about in the last episode, or through setting new boundaries, or through working and being in new environments. Sometimes they come through letting go of things you once believed were essential. And sometimes through recognizing strengths you previously overlooked or took for granted. And sometimes simply through giving yourself permission to think differently. Now, one of the most powerful things I've seen in my work over the years is this moment. The moment when someone realizes that their life is not fixed, that their career is not something that's happening to them, it's something that they gradually influence, that they can adjust, rework, and redesign. Not overnight and not perfectly, but in a really meaningful way that works for who they are now. And that's really what this podcast has been about so far. Not quick answers and not dramatic reinventions, but about helping you to create more awareness of yourself, understanding yourself better, because it's through that hopefully your agency begins to return, even if it's quietly. And gradually, often very gradually, the shape of your life begins to shift. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Because at some point in this process, something else began to shift. Not just what you want to do and how you want to live your life, but how you define success altogether. Because what used to matter starts to matter less, and something else starts to take its place. And I think of this as a success shift. A movement away from success that looks right on the outside towards success that actually feels right on the inside and in your life. Because when you understand yourself more clearly, you can begin shaping your career so it supports the life you actually want to live, not the other way around. So in the next part of the podcast, we're going to begin introducing something more structured. A way of thinking about careers and lives that will help you navigate all of this in a practical way. A framework I've developed over many years of coaching and teaching. It's not a formula, but it is a guide, a way of making sense of the many different factors that shape how we live and work. So we'll start exploring that next time. But for now, just notice something simple. Your life is not a fixed structure you have to fit inside. It's something that evolves with you, and recognizing that is the beginning of meaningful change. So until we speak again, take the very best care of yourselves. And I look forward to speaking to you all next week. This has been Proactive Empowered Careers. If today's episode resonated, follow or subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss what comes next. And if this podcast is supporting you, leaving a short review helps others find these conversations. And remember, your career isn't separate from who you are. It's an expression of you and the life you want to live.